What's up YouTube? Jason here, Morph, Mixology, Reptiles. Welcome back to the channel. You know, I get questions all the time on Instagram and YouTube videos and whatnot. How do you feed your snakes? How did you go from feeding live when you bred your own rats to feeding frozen thawed? What's your technique as to getting them warm? So on and so forth. And I've neglected to answer those questions because for the longest time, our feeding success rate was super low. The live feeding worked fairly well, but I had a number of problem feeders. I attribute a lot of that to the setup, I think, more than the feeders themselves, because our rats were in perfect condition and plenty healthy in that. And then obviously when we moved here, I sold off the entire rat breeding operation, went to frozen thawed, moved all the snakes in the middle of summer, built this room around them. It was a nightmare. I was down to like 40% success rate with feeds. It was insane. Really frustrating, quite honestly. And I've gone through a handful of different ways that I prepare the rodents to present, and I think I've figured out what works really well for me. All right, first thing I have to say is I am convinced at this point. It's been about, 4 months now? Something like that, since we got our Freedom Breeder racks. And I am convinced that the gray tubs in particular are a huge part of why our feeding success has gone up, even with frozen thawed. And I also think that the entire room, everything is more consistent than it used to be at our old house. This is a lot smaller space than we had before, so it's a lot easier to regulate temperature and humidity and that kind of thing. Plus, you know, the whole thing, everything's gotten better. Our sheds have gotten better, our feeding response got better, the whole 9 yards. The other thing that this room has that is an advantage is it's more or less sealed. It's got the 2 doors, which are really nicely well sealed. All of the joints and everything are obviously sealed. The only gap is these vents here and here that are vented through this wall that I built into the main garage. And the reason I did that was so that it wasn't so perfectly sealed that like the doors wouldn't close and you couldn't get any fresh air and that kind of thing. You don't want to make the room totally airtight. But aside from that, it pretty much is. So when we go to feed, which for us is typically Monday nights, I set up the rodents ahead of time. I have to give a bit of credit here to Garrick of Royal Constrictor Designs. By the way, fresh new logo for him, looks sick. I love it. Super awesome. Congrats, dude. If you by some chance stumble across this, I love it. In fact, I'll put it right here. Check this out. Love this new logo. This looks dope. So anyway, I have to give Garrick the credit here because I was actually watching one of his videos, and I'll put his channel in the description down below. You should go check him out if for some reason you're not already. But I was watching how he prepares his rodents and presents them to the animals because he feeds almost exclusively frozen, and his collection, as a lot of you might know, is massive. And we're talking like hundreds or thousands of animals. So, and he starts everything on frozen thawed, and it does great. So what we start with here, so I'll spin around, is every Monday morning when I get up from my overnight shift, sometime around lunchtime usually, I'll come in here and I'll set out on the Freedom Breeder boa rack and stainless top I had designed. I'll set out a smorgasbord, so to speak, a buffet of all the rats I think I'm gonna need for that night's feeding. It's generally about the same as what I need week after week, but obviously going through the breeding season, the females will start to go off food as they're getting closer to ovulation and that kind of thing. So what I need down the line is obviously a little bit different. And as holdbacks and that kind of thing grow up, you know, you go from a lot of, you know, fuzzies or weans or fuzzies or crawlers or whatever to a lot of weans to a lot of smalls, so on and so forth. So I'll set this stuff out frozen. By the way, these all came from Charlie Birch at the Rodent Barn. They're about 2 hours west of us here in Montana. They do ship around the country. I'll put his information down below as well. I've been super happy with his production. He's actually the one that bought our production setup for our rats when we got out. And I get a lot of my rats from him. Cold-Blooded Cafe, obviously, another phenomenal option. I'll have both of them linked down below. Anyway, so I'll set these out around lunchtime or so on Monday morning and let them thaw out naturally. I have found personally myself that if you let them thaw like this room is about 74 to 77 degrees typically, that if they are thawed like this and they don't get used, that you can refreeze them once, maybe twice, use it again the next week, thawed out, no big deal. If you heat them up past like 85 or so, throw them out. That's just my personal experience. So if I don't use this row, then I'll just bag them back up, put them back in the freezer, we'll use them next week. So the good thing about getting them set up like this the morning of, first of all, I'm OCD about things, so I like having stuff organized and in position, and that helps me identify what I need for the day. But as they thaw with the ceiling fan and the heater and the mini split up here blowing air through here and that, this room starts to stink like rats pretty quick. And I'm convinced that too is helping their snakes get like riled up and ready to go, some of which I have to actually open the tubs with a hook because they come flying out on feed day, so they know what's up. The other thing I do is we got to get them warm. And this is something new, and like I said, I got to take a page out of Garrick DeMeyer's book here. I set up over here just a light fixture and a tank mount. It's just mounted to my wall here. And inside of this is like 140 watt, something like that. This is a 250 watt reflector style, halogen lamp or whatever it is. This thing is hot, real hot. So it took a while to figure out about what this spacing needed for me. Obviously I'm on a metal top, that's gonna be different for you depending on what you do. But I'll come in here when I'm ready to start feeding and we'll flip this on. And it's gonna give me a pretty big, about a dinner plate size area hot spot right here. And it only takes maybe 3 or 4 minutes for that spot to get warm. And then as I'm ready to start feeding, we'll literally just start putting some of these in the middle of the hot spot, like so. I usually only do about maybe 3 or 4 or 5 at a time, something like that, depending on what I'm doing, because I know like certain stuff I can go through and I know that like this entire row is gonna eat, no questions asked. So I'll put 5 up or whatever, Again, like I said, I don't want to get those hot and then not use them, because then I gotta throw them away, and I hate doing that. So I only heat up as I need and as they get fed off. Other than that, let's feed a couple animals and I'll show you my presentation style after these are warm. And I have no idea what temperature these get to, by the way. I tried to temp them and like time it. I just go with the flow. They sit there for 3, 4, 5 minutes or whatever as I'm feeding, and I have not had any issue overall doing that. So let's go ahead and feed some snakes. I'll see if I can get the lighting just right, because the last thing I have to do, they seem to like it when it's dark. So I shut the main lights off, and the only light now is this incandescent bulb under here that's actually part of my garage, and the heat lamp, and usually the TV with typically Billy's podcast, but it's over now because it's kind of late. This happens to be a video from Brian Cusco, him and Garrett Hartle playing with gators, but that's not what you're here for. Let's feed some snakes. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed that. Obviously I didn't show you all the snakes because that would take me 3 times longer than I need to. I gotta say, this method for me seems to be working pretty well. I think I gotta attribute some of it to the Freedom Breeder tubs, some of it to the new racks, some of it to the new room. And I guess overall, probably the most important one is patience. You know, we've been doing all frozen for a little over a year now, and in this setup configuration for about what 3 or 4 months or whatever. And in fact, one of the big breeder females down there that I'm hoping goes this year, and she looks pretty good, but has not eaten for me once. No joke, not once since I got her, and that was like 8 months ago. Maybe not quite that long, but something like that. And I've talked to the breeder, he's a buddy of mine. She ate great. She's not losing any weight, so I'm not worried about her in that regard. But for whatever reason, never ate once until tonight. So I think persistence is key more than anything, and that's the best advice I can give you. But this heat lamp deal seems to be working. Thank you, Garrick DeMeyer, for that idea. We're up to probably 70 to 80% on average, maybe a little higher depending on the day. Like I said, I got some now that aren't eating because they're getting ready to ovulate and lay. But that's going to do it for this week. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and yeah, it's kind of fun. Now I've got to go through in about 20 minutes or so and double check all of them. The cool thing is, since they're not live, I can leave them in overnight, and it's not a big deal. You don't want to leave them in there much longer than that, because that reeks after about 24 hours. But you know, it's late now, and some of them are kind of shy eaters, so I'll probably just close up shop and head in for the night, and I'll come out in the morning. I'll run through everybody, pull out ones that don't eat, which is very few, honestly. Very seldomly do I leave one and it not stay or not get eaten. So it's working pretty well. I'm pretty happy with it. I hope that some of this stuff helps you kind of iron out your feeding regimen. And if you were just here to see the cool feedings and some of the snake strikes and that, we got some of those too. That's going to do it for this week, guys. I appreciate it. I'll see you in the next one. See ya.